Pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today I wanted to share with you a few tips inside of Unity here. I am working on combining two different levels. I know it sounds a little strange, but there are a few things here that I've run across that are, common pitfalls and just some general good practice things that I do. So I wanted to share those with you. So first up, let's take a look at what we've got going on here. I have the apartment level, which you may have seen before from my group, the int project that I've been working on for quite some time. And this is the apartment, and what I've been doing is combining it with our more recent level that we've created, the outside city scene, because we did have a roof level to the apartment. So now I'm putting the exterior decorations, and primarily such that when I go into the game view, we will see this city in the background. So it's important that it be there. And it's pretty low poly, and just, decorated to look like it's a, cityscape and your typical skyscrapers here. But one of the things I noticed when I first imported the scene is look at how blurry this looks. Something's definitely wrong. So this is our first tip, is when you're working with a large scale object like this, as you can see, it's quite large. This is several city blocks. So we made this building setup and we worked out the textile density, and I said, okay, we're going to use a 4096 texture size for all these buildings because they're so large. And yet when I look at this, it looks blurry. Something's wrong. I should have had all the right detail here. Well, if I go into the imported, here we are under Assets, Materials, Textures, and then from my buildings, and I look at my texture files here, you'll notice the difference is in the default max size here. And this is the default that Unity sets. So when I import these files, they're being crunched or compressed down to a 2048. Well, they should be 4096. So if I just change this and say, here we go, apply, you'll start to notice a difference here as soon as it loads in. There we go. Let's do all of them, and we'll see it pop in. Do the second one. It'll start to get better. There we go. Getting much better. Now this is our occlusion, or emissive rather, pardon me. So the emissive for the windows. That way they get nice and crisp. And now let's make sure also that the normal map is also the same. So then we'll have those nice definitions between the windows. Now I can already tell from way across here that's getting a lot better. And even as I get close to some buildings, you'll see that the windows are much more square. Whereas before they were definitely blurring a bit because it was downsampling, which that's what Unity was telling it to do, but that's not what we wanted it to do. So that's my first tip there, is make sure you check this, because the default might not be what you need, okay? Now, secondarily, as I'm bringing in these objects, one of the things that makes this very important is I've modeled everything and I've laid out everything just so that when I bring in things like, here's my whole city, all the buildings here, and you'll notice that the city fits perfectly around the building. There's the streets going by. We haven't brought in the streets yet, so it's just black at the moment. But the streets are going by and the apartment is right in the middle like it should be. And positioning all of this can get quite troublesome if you have not the right pivots, or if you are doing it manually or kind of haphazardly. So what we do here is I made sure that this is all one object, and all the buildings have been unwrapped and painted separately and then recombined. And you'll notice that my pivot here is 0, 0, 0. So I set that up so then whenever I pass this off to another team member, all they have to do is import it, and even if it ends up over here or wherever, all they have to do is come up here and say 0, 0, 0, and now they are assured that it is exactly where I intended it to be, and everything lines up nicely. So that's another great tip. Whenever you have a chance to do that, definitely do so. It will save your teammates bacon, make sure that they know exactly where everything is supposed to be. Okay, same thing with our props here. I have the street props. All of these were modeled separately and combined. These are barricades and things like lamps and benches and all kinds of things that are all over the place. We have trash cans. There they are, trash cans, all over the place. And then we bring in the city streets. The streets have been light mapped so that we see these lights shining, so that we don't have 500 lights all over the place that are not relevant to the actual level, which takes place primarily indoors. We're indoors here, and then it's only when we walk out here and all these people are animated to be, this person's trying to resuscitate this person's laying here wounded, and we look around, we can see the city, the open air, because it's been attacked. So that's another thing that's very important, is to make sure that you're using lighting appropriately, and so we've light mapped everything we can, and everything inside has lights only where necessary. So that's a good tip as well. The other thing I wanted to talk about today with you is organization and structure. So with my scene, obviously here I have a ton of things going on. If I were to select everything right here, you'll notice like there's a lot going on here, okay? And here you can see my structure here gets very complicated. There's a lot in here. So it's very important to organize well so that you know where things are. So I may have talked about this before, but I wanted to reiterate because it is extremely important. Organization is king. So here what I have is these are just empty game objects that I have set to static, and they are set to position 0, 0, 0. And that's not necessarily a position thing. It does help, but that's more for just organization. And I've named it lights, and it has nothing else to do except to be here as a container. So then underneath of this lights container, you'll see I have everything that is a light. So everything that is a physical light, even the things that are the models of the light, you know, like the shape of the light fixture as a model has been included in this. And then I put all those together, and they're all here, all organized so that I know where my lights are. And this way, if I'm working in the scene and I want to work with just the lights, I can hide everything else except this. Or if I don't want to see the lights for now, I can just unhide that. And now that helps me clean up the scene a bit so that I can really work well with what's going on here. And you notice here I have a few that I've missed because these are underneath my keypads. The keypads are these little keypads next to the doors. So I've included lights there to really break those out because those are not lights. Those are lights rather. They should be broken out and put into the lights group. But I can also hide the keypads and all that goes away. So if you're working on something in particular and say the doors were not quite lining up and I needed to make some adjustments, I have everything in these organizational structure. Pardon me. So these sirens, these are like those things in your building that tell you when there's a fire to get out, you know, that kind of thing. So I have those. And the keypads, all of the rubble, all of the debris, which I'm working on reducing that quite a bit for, draw calls, making sure to have all of this all over the place. I'm going to try and make some flat textures, what they commonly call alpha cards, try and show some of these finer details and make sure that they're not taking away resources from our build. Then we have a whole lot of other things down here, lots of decorations. The characters themselves are all in one group. So characters, so if I needed to hide those, I could do that. Let's do that real quick. And I have a separate group for colliders. So when you have these shapes in here, all these fancy models, but you still need a collider to tell you where you can and cannot walk. So this is an oversized one for testing, and then we're going to have some smaller ones to make sure that they fit the world, but the colliders are in their own. And let's see, let's go to the top, and I'm going to just collapse everything. So the effects, that's all the fire, anything that's a smoke, and this is the big one that I use all the time, is structure. So the structure is anything that is part of just the base, walls, floors, ceilings, that kind of thing. Anything that is basically not a decoration, this has to be here in order to have the characters walk around. Think of your room, but you remove all the desks and chairs and posters and everything in your room, and all you're left with is the walls, floors, and ceilings. That's what I kind of consider to be structure. So anything that is structure, I put into the structure layout here. So if I hide that, you'll notice most of the world goes away. Now I've got some objects in here that need to be added to the structure, but most of the rest of this that's left in here, you'll notice, are just decorations. So it's all the debris, the rubble, the fire, all of these furniture, that kind of thing. So this really helps me keep organized and be able to quickly, almost like Photoshop, where you have layers, you can hide and unhide things. This way I can hide and unhide what I'm working on and get everything else out of my face temporarily so that I can focus on what's left and what really needs to be there. So here's almost nothing in the actual level that we can walk through and play, and the rest of this is all just background decoration stuff. So if I'm looking at that and making sure all of that imported properly, making sure that there's no seams or light seams or any edges showing, and then I can say, okay, you know what, I'm done with the city for now, let's hide the city, and I'll probably make another thing saying background would be a good one. So we'll put all of that stuff into the background, and then I can work with just what's left. And then anytime I need everything to come back, I can just go in here and say, bring it all back, let's look at just the level here without the background. So really great for organization, very nice and snappy in order to hide and unhide things, and it's a simple thing that not a lot of people think to do. You can also do something similar to this, using the layers system here. The layers here, you can add layers, and I've seen people do programmatically to hide entire layers. So just like Photoshop, having a layer to it. But I find this is just as easy, and it helps to keep everything here organized. And then our build coordinator, the lead programmer who puts together the builds for the game, he and I worked out this structure, so he knows exactly which ones need to be where, and the fact that they are all always static and 0, 0, 0. That also means that anything on that layer, like if I look at the lights, anything in this group, as long as this object, I could move it way over here just to move it out of the way. As long as I put it back to 0, 0, 0, all the lights go back exactly where they should be. And this is a way for me as the lead art director, and I'm mostly the world builder, putting things in here and making sure everything is where I want it to be, where story has driven it to be. I can then say, okay, everything's all lined up, it's exactly the way I like it, and then I send it over to him and say, as long as you put this at 0, 0, 0, everything lines up exactly the way I intended it to. And then he can just focus on the code and making it all work. And it ends up being a beautiful system. So just wanted to share those thoughts with you guys. Make sure that you're always working intelligently. We make sure that we use all of the tools available to us, and make sure that we're using these little tips and tricks so that we have the ability to organize well, because organization is king, especially when you get to a huge project and thousands of objects, and I come to you and say, this light, this particular light right here, I need moved. I want to move it further this way because it shouldn't be this close to this destruction. Well, if you had all of these objects, unorganized here, which one is that? I mean, you could click it, yeah, you could click it and it would highlight, but finding the name of something all the way in here, especially when objects are like this and they're so buried and over top of one another, or if the object is currently hidden because it needs to be unhidden later, that's a difficult thing to deal with as well. So let's keep organized, guys, and if you have any tips about how you organize your projects or anything that you think I've missed or is untrue, please let me know. I want to make sure that everyone, including myself, that we are working as efficiently and cleanly as possible, so that way all of our ideas come to life as quickly as possible and as authentically as possible, and then the world gets to see all the creative things that we have to produce. And that's really exciting for me. So I hope that this helps at least some of you. If you guys have any other tips, as always, let me know. So signing off, as always, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.